Charles Darwin saw many animals while he was in Maldonado, such as the tugo, which essentially looks like an overgrown guinea pig. Darwin describes it as having the habits of a mole and that it digs burrows similar to that of a mole's burrows, but the tugo's burrows are much smaller. It is usually brown in color, and they are nocturnal, and their principal food is the roots of plants, which are the objects of their extensive burrows. The name tugo is an imitation of the sound that they make. If they become frightened or angry, they make a similar noise. He also thinks that the tugo are blind and that they seemed to take no notice when he had put his hand close to their face. Darwin also saw various birds in which he had described in great detail. The Molothrus niger deposits its eggs in other birds' nests because they have eggs at intervals and do not stay in that country long enough to hatch all of the eggs. The Saurophagus sulphurus is typical of the great American tribe of the tyrant flycatchers. In its structure, it closely approaches the true shrikes in that its habits, but in its habits it can be compared to many birds. Also, Darwin saw a mockingbird called by the inhabitants Calandria. It is remarkable from possessing a song far superior to that of any other bird in the country. Indeed, Darwin thinks that it is the only bird in South America in which he had observed to take its stand simply for the purpose of singing. Darwin saw many carrion birds whose habits of eating dead carcasses just disgusted him. He saw the caracara, the turkey buzzard called the gallinazo, and the condor. For every animal that he saw, he compared it to the animals that he had already seen and known from where he was from. However, one instance that took me a while to understand was when Darwin happened upon some sandhills or sand hillocks that had tubes running through them. They went deep into the ground, and I thought they had been man-made at first, and I'm pretty sure so did Darwin, but he had went on to describe them as glass tubes. I then understood that lightning had made those tubes into the sand. Darwin thinks that the area around salt water increases the thunderstorms, so the lightning around the areas he found had made those glass tubes, and that would have been a sight for Darwin indeed.
Chapter 3 concerns Maldonado, Uruguay, or Banda Oriental. Maldonado is situated on the northern bank of Plata and not very far from the mouth of the estuary. Darwin mentions seeing a shoal of porpoises, many hundreds in number, on his passage from Rio de Janeiro to Plata. Upon entering the estuary of Plata, the weather turns bad and Darwin catches a rare but splendid scene of natural fireworks called St. Elmo's Fire. Darwin says he spends 10 weeks in Maldonado and calls it a quiet, forlorn little town that is built from a central plaza outward. He describes the landscape as uninteresting, hilly, and without trees. However, he tells of small, brilliantly colored birds and dwarf flowers that include one flower similar to a daisy. Darwin goes on to mention that he gathered a nearly perfect collection of the animals, birds, and reptiles, but refrains from making observations about them in order to tell of an excursion he made to the river Polanco, which he claims is about 70 miles north of Maldonado. He passes through the village of Las Minas, which is hilly and surrounded by low, rocky mountains, and sees ostriches. Darwin then stays in the house of a rich landed proprietor named Don Juan Fuentes. He puts great detail into the description of his stay with Don Juan, including animal slaughters and using lazo and bolas to catch cattle. When Darwin reaches the place he was most anxious to examine, which I believe is the river he set out for, he finds great numbers of partridges. He then returns to Maldonado by way of Pan de Azucar, where he climbs the Sierra de las Animas. From the top, Darwin sees to the westward an immense level plain as far as the mount at Montevideo, and to the eastward over the country of Maldonado. Darwin then makes a general assessment of trees and notes that the almost entire absence of them is remarkable. He also states that some of the hills are partly covered by thickets and that there are some willow trees on the banks of large streams. Spaniards introduced poplars, olives, peaches, and other fruit trees, according to Darwin. Darwin also states that abundant and heavy rain falls during the winter, and the summer, though dry, is not so in any excessive degree. During his stay in Maldonado, Darwin collected several quadrupeds, 80 kinds of birds, and many reptiles, including 9 species of snakes. He found an abundant deer called Cervus campestris, and says that the buck has an overpoweringly strong and offensive odor. Darwin also found that the capybara, or the water hog, is likewise very common.
In Chapter 3 of the Voyage of the Beagle, Darwin speaks of 2 places. One of them is Maldonado in Uruguay, and the other is La Plata in Argentina. We know what these places were like in 1832 because of Darwin's descriptions. But what do they look like today? Maldonado has grown to about 63,000 people since 1755 when it was first founded. This is according to a 2011 census. It is also now the 7th most populated city in Uruguay. Today, the city looks like this. Being on the coast, Maldonado is well known for having the most popular and developed of Uruguay's beach towns, called Punta del Este. La Plata is the capital city of the province of Buenos Aires in Argentina. The population is now at about 740,000 people according to a 2001 census, and it takes up a total area of about 1,800 square miles. Today, the city looks like this. La Plata is best known today for having the biggest seaside resort in Argentina, called Mar del Plata. Both cities have grown immensely since Darwin first passed through them, and they have been largely influenced by European immigration.
Today, Maldonado is an urban city right on the ocean. Many people go there for vacation as it is now a tourist destination. Thus, there are many hotels and resorts there in order for people to have easy access to the attractions. Like many urban areas, the city is organized into blocks. The population in 2011 was 62,590 people, making it the 7th most populated city in the country. Compared to other urban areas such as Albuquerque, New Mexico, the cost of rent is considerably less, while the cost to eat out is much higher. Compared to areas like Manhattan, the cost of living and to do anything is much lower. The area has a regional international airport and highways. There is also a railway that goes to Montevideo, which is the nation's capital, 67 miles away. However, just outside the city, there are much smaller, separated towns and large amounts of open land. There's a lake about 4 miles west of the city called Laguna del Diario, and a river about 2 miles to the east of it called Arroyo Maldonado. The average elevation of the country is 383 feet. On this map taken from Google Maps, you can see the lake right here and the river over here, and then the city's right in between them, and this is the bay to the ocean. Palm trees, maritime pines, and eucalyptus grow on the shoreline of the city. The climate is still warm, humid, and temperate. The summers are hot and there is no dry season, which allows for its tropical greenery. The average precipitation per year is over 40 inches, with a lot of summer storms. Tuna, bass, mackerel, and anchovies are fished from the area. Maldonado is still heavily populated with birds, as Darwin described. There are over 150 different species recorded in the area. Many people still go there just for bird watching. These species include types of blackbirds, cardinals, warblers, finches, sparrows, thrushes, mockingbirds, wrens, swallows, and more. There are also still hawks and vultures, as Darwin had depicted. Many of the larger native animals have disappeared from the country altogether. However, lizards, tortoises, and poisonous snakes can still be found in many of the areas in the country.
Hey guys, it's Michael. I was delegated the part of talking about Charles Darwin's reaction to everything you have just learned, based on his observations in the past and what the world is like today. And as I approached this, I thought, how would I understand a man, and how could I make an educated guess on how he would respond if I did not know anything about him? So I kind of looked up some facts about him, and I learned that he was born on February 12th, 1809. His mother died when he was young, but he still showed a passion for knowledge, and he yearned for what he saw around him. And one thing that he liked to do was to go sit outside, feel the wind blow around him and the trees as they shook by the wind, how the birds sang, and that really shaped him, molded him. And because of that, he earned a bachelor's degree at Chamberlain in 1831. Immediately after that, he went on a voyage of the HMS Beagle, and this lasted 1,740 days. He was able to observe many things, awesome things. And one thing that I loved about Charles Darwin is he observed what most people never could observe. He saw the ordinary and saw something completely different. And he didn't just take his observations of the present. He didn't limit himself just to his time. He took his observations of the present and looked at how they could change over the future. And he predicted a future where the fittest survived. But after his observations, after his travel with HMS Beagle, this was his second voyage, he returned home in 1836. There he married Emma Wedgwood, and together they had 10 children. Also that year, in 1836, he published The Voyage of the Beagle, what you guys are now learning or reading as we're all together in this class. One thing, though, that was kind of surprising was Charles Darwin was never a strong person. He was very ill. He inherited many stomach problems from his family. But he also developed arthritis, eczema, and boils, as well as he was a weak man. He was never a strong man, and in his own terms, he would have never made it. He wouldn't survive because he was not the fittest. And from this, I thought that he would have the opposite reaction, one that those who are weak can go against people's judgments because they can accomplish great things. They're aware of their weakness, but they don't let it hinder them. And so that's what I thought, but he apparently chose the observation of the second, and that was his observation through nature. And what he saw really must have shaped and molded him, but there was two things that I observed from Charles's life. One was that on his deathbed, there's a rumor that goes around saying that he did not believe in evolution at the end of his life. He recanted that and went back to Christianity on his deathbed. But those closest to him, his family, said that wasn't true. So I didn't want to be close-minded and think that only observe his reaction from one viewpoint. So I decided to take two viewpoints. And the first viewpoint is how he would react if he had accepted Christianity instead of evolution. The second is if he had accepted evolution and not accepted Christianity. So I think that if he had accepted Christianity, he would have been less, I don't know, what's the word? He would have been less shocked at the world today. I mean, much of it has changed, yes, but a lot of it has stayed the same as well. For example, in Maldonado, where he visited on his 488th day of his travel, there's still over 300 species of birds there. And to me, if his theory was correct, there would be a lot fewer species of birds. That's just birds. And there's so many other species of tortoises as well as iguanas and different things like that. And I would just really be surprised that there are so many like that. So I think that he would have been a little less shocked if he had believed in Christianity. If he had believed in evolution, I think that he might not have been as shocked as we think as well, because there are so many things in this world today also that do prove his beliefs. For example, the people in the Americas as well as in North America, you'll find that there's a greater white population, an overwhelming greater population of white people than the natives. For example, in Maldonado, there's 80% white over the natives. I think that is his two reactions. If you guys enjoyed it, thank you.